All right, good day, everybody. This is Joe Leonard from GeoVision. I am stepping in, guys. I got to apologize. We had a little bit of a last-minute emergency here. We had in our office a kind of a localized network outage in that area. So for the last day of the training here, we had to scramble a bit, and I am remotely going to be stepping in for Anthony today and hosting a somewhat modified version of today's training. Today, we were originally scheduled to cover the control center, edge recording manager, and then the GV cloud solution. We unfortunately won't be able to show control center, but I will be able to go over the edge recording manager solution and how you can remotely view through that program. I will also show how you can point your VMS system to the GV cloud solution to be able to remotely view through a web browser. And then I might even be able to pull up the new GV Cloud mobile app. And once we add our VMS in as a host, I could probably even demonstrate from my phone and show that mobile app. So I apologize to everyone for kind of a last minute change here. And obviously with one topic being omitted from this training, the training will probably be a little bit shorter today. So if you would like some further training or information on the control center, please follow up with us after this training event. So thanks again, everybody, for attending this week. I'm going to start and we will focus on the Edge Recording Manager first, and then I will move over to the GV Cloud solution. So currently, Edge Recording Manager is a program that's a client viewing software that can be installed on a customer's PC. On a laptop or a desktop PC, and it gives that customer the ability to remotely view live video as well as recorded footage. And of course, you can save clips and those kinds of things. Currently, it is free for viewing 32 channels at a time. There are licenses that can be purchased, 64, 96, and 128 channels of simultaneous viewing. And as a side note, when you purchase the license for 64, 96, or 128, it also unlocks multi-monitor support. So you do have the ability to designate certain cameras to go to certain monitors when you buy that license. Soon, when the VMS v20 that we've been training on this week is released, there will be an update to Edge Recording Manager. And it will also unlock 64 channels of remote viewing for no additional charge. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show how to get a VMS system added in as a host in the Edge Recording Manager program. And then I'll give just kind of a basic tour of some of the everyday features within Edge Recording Manager. Now, when you are adding in a VMS system to the Edge Recording Manager software, you do need to be aware that if it's on a remote network, there are some ports you're going to have to open on the network. And those ports are going to be ports 80, 5552, 5611, and 3388. All right, so just make sure if your customer wants to be able to connect remotely from Edge Recording Manager to first get those ports open on the VMS server side. Now, one of my good integrator partners here in Southern California has given me kind of last minute access to one of their VMS machines and allowing us to use that for the training here. So I'm going to be working off of this. And by the way, I didn't ask at the beginning, can I get just anyone to give me something in the chat or come off of mute and let me know everyone can see the screen just fine?
Screen's just fine, Joe.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So within the Edge Recording Manager, within the VMS software, we are going to get prepared here to add it in as a host to the VMS. Now, this customer has already got their ports opened up that I talked about, so we're good there. The other thing that you'll need to do is make sure to get your network services enabled within the VMS. So to do that, you go up to the toolbar, and then right here under Network, there's a couple that you want to check. Webcam server, and then you'll want to come down here to Control Center server. And I typically like to hit Start All Services, so it will start all of those services. And just as a heads up too, whenever you first enable one of these services for the first time, you will get a pop-up on the screen, and that will allow you to edit the port that you want to use. So for example, if you don't want to use port 80 for the webcam server, maybe you want to change it to 81 or 8088 or whatever, you can make those changes when that screen pops up. All right, so get those services enabled first. And another little side tip that I like to give installers is right here under the Startup tab, you do have the ability to make those network services run automatically when the VMS launches. Okay, so let's say, for example, that there's a power outage at your facility and then maybe the VMS machine comes back up. It will automatically launch those network services for you. Okay, so it's kind of a safeguard and prevents, additional outages when you're trying to remotely view. Just as a little side tip, whenever you're on this screen, I also recommend using the auto run when Windows starts. And again, that's just going to make sure that your VMS launches. And you could even check auto monitoring so your cameras will start recording as soon as the VMS launches. All right, so again, get your network services turned on, get your ports open. And if you need to find out what your external IP address is, just open up a web browser and you can get your external IP right there. I'm just going to grab that. And now I'm going to flip back into my Edge Recording Manager program. Now, when you're in Edge Recording Manager and you want to add the host, you can come here in the top left and go to Host List to expand that. And this has changed just slightly with the newest version of Edge Recording Manager that is on our website now. You have the option to search host if you're looking for a local VMS that's on the same internal network. Or what we'll be doing today is what's called add host, because we're obviously going to be adding the external IP. Now, this is where I was talking about where it's slightly new. If you're a longtime GeoVision user, you'll notice this is a new menu here with the new version. But under the Select Catalog drop-down, you'll want to go in, and for today, we're going to be choosing Video Management Software. And then you've got a sub-menu here where you either have VMS, Recording Server, or AI Guard. Okay, so obviously today we are adding a VMS machine, so I will select that as the first option. And then you'll want to give it a host name. I'll just call this test site. Put in your external IP or your internal, if of course you're on the same internal network. And then you'll want to add in the ID and the password of the local VMS machine. And then if you did change any of the default ports, just make sure to update them right here. And then before you hit OK, you do want to hit this update information button. And what that will do is it will reach out and it will establish a connection to the VMS machine. And then you'll get an update that shows how many cameras that site has. And you'll see a message here that says system information updated successfully. We hit OK, and you can see this site has 18 cameras. And now we can hit OK there. And over on the left, we now have our new site that we've added. Again, I called that one test site. And as you can see, I have several different servers out here that I've added over the years. And that's kind of the beauty of Edge Recording Manager is for a multi-site client. It's especially convenient because you can have as many locations or as many VMS or recording server systems as you want added to this host list. And then later, I'll also talk about how you can create layouts and be able to easily cycle through different sets of cameras. So now that I have my test site added, I can click my plus sign there and expand my camera tree. All of our cameras are listed there. And by the way, if you named them on the VMS side, those names will pull through here in Edge Recording Manager. Now, for bringing cameras in, you'll want to, of course, create a layout. I've already got a 3x3 layout here, but I'm going to first add some cameras to this, and then I'll show you how to add additional layouts. But you have a couple options. If you would like, you can just simply drag and drop individual cameras one at a time. Or right here on the first entry where it says camera, if you just drag and drop that in the first position, it will go ahead and throw all your cameras in order. Now, obviously, I only have a 3x3, so I'm only going to get the first 9 cameras. But if I had a larger layout and I wanted to bring the rest of them in, I could do that. Just keep in mind that with the free version, you can view up to 32 channels simultaneously. And then if you buy the licenses beyond that, you will be able to display more cameras simultaneously. Now, a couple other things here before I navigate off of the host list. I talked a minute ago about the names of the cameras. Let's say that you added the VMS server here in the Edge Recording Manager, and you didn't yet name the cameras on the VMS side. No problem. What will first happen, though, is it's going to display as like camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and so on the list. But you can update this later if needed. And the way that you would do that is you can right-click on the name of the host, and then you can go in here and hit Update. And then you'll see it will go through and cycle and give you an update. It'll take 30 seconds or so, and then you'll get a message saying complete, and then all of your names should pull through. So again, if you did not name the cameras first on the VMS side, you do still have the ability to update this and pull those names through at a later time. A couple other things, if you right-click on the host, you can also go in here, and if you ever need to edit your host settings, you can do that. So for example, if the VMS server password changed and you need to update that password, you can go in here and do that. And then before you hit OK on this screen, just always make sure to hit the Update Information button first, and then hit OK before you proceed on. All right, let's talk about layouts now that we have our host added. So up here in the top left, layout, you can create as many layouts as you want. And this gives the customer the ability to group cameras and be able to easily flip between different sets of cameras or different sites. Okay, so it's all going to vary just depending on what you want to name your layout. But first you would come up here and hit the plus sign and hit Add New Layout. And then you would just give it a name. I'll call this Exterior 1 maybe. And if you'll notice right here, you've got a few different generic options that you can choose from. If you like, one of the predefined grids, you can just simply click on its bubble. You can also choose a number of divisions that you want. Or the one that I like, it's pretty convenient, is the one right here called Customize. Whenever you click on this and hit OK, it gives you a blank canvas that you can work with. And I think this is especially convenient when you're using panoramic 180-degree cameras. Because let's say, for example, you wanted to have this whole bottom section dedicated as a 180-degree field of view, while you wanted your top section here to maybe display some smaller boxes. Okay, you do have the ability to do that. And all you have to do is just simply put your mouse in the first box, drag to however large or small you want that division to be. And then once you release your mouse, it's going to then go ahead and merge those cells together. All right, and then you do have a reset button here if you'd like to reset it. And then also you have the ability to choose the number of divisions that you want right here whenever you're starting this layout. Now, once you hit OK, it's going to give you your blank canvas there. And we can look over here at our host list and just simply drag and drop. And here in a moment, once this bottom camera populates, you're going to see what I was talking about with the 180-degree cameras. Let's see here. We'll drag in a few different cameras. Anyways, once you have your layouts created, you have the ability to just simply double click on them, and then it would call up the cameras that you have predefined into that layout. All right, so again, it allows a user to be able to, there we go with our 180, just had to give it a minute. But it allows a user to be able to divide up their cameras. Maybe they want to have, 10 cameras from site 1, another 10 cameras from site 2, or maybe all from one location. They'd want to have their interior cameras on one layout and then their exterior cameras on another layout, and just be able to easily cycle through those. You would have the ability to do that by creating those different layouts. Now, if you do purchase the license for the 64, 96, or 128 channel number of cameras, like I mentioned, it also unlocks the ability to have multiple monitors. And where that comes into play is once you've created the layouts, you can right-click on it, go to Apply To, and you'll first want to choose Application Position. And this will bring up a window here where you will have your number of live views. So live view 1, live view 2, and 3. and you can right click on it and hit show, and then you can choose which monitor you would want that live view to appear on. And as you can see here, I can draw however large or small I want that to appear on that screen. So if maybe you don't want it to fill up the full screen, you want something to be happening in the background, and be able to see both, you can do that. Or of course, you can full screen it as well. Now, once you get your live views set here as you like them on the application position, you can just close that and then come back and right click on the layout that you want to send to another monitor, hover over apply to, and then choose the live view number that you put on that other monitor. Now, I'm not going to obviously be able to simulate that here. I don't have the ability to show you another monitor right now, but you would just click on that and then it would activate that layout on the secondary monitor. All right, and again, there's no real limit on the number of layouts that you create. So, feel free to choose as many or create as many as you would like. And then you do, of course, have the ability to delete layouts if you no longer want to use them. So you would just right click and go down and hit delete there. Now, there is also a scan window feature, which is pretty convenient. If you want to be able to have like a section of the live view display multiple channels and scan through, you can do that. You would just simply drag that scan window into the division that you want or into the channel that you want. And as you can see there, your cameras will start to cycle through. So what's happening here is basically the cameras from this site are cycling through. And you even have the ability to go in and hit properties, and then you can change a few things. So if you wanted to alter like the display position, like which camera is the first camera in the list, you have the ability to, move that up or down the list and create, customization there. You can also choose the number of seconds that that channel would display before it changes to the next camera. All right, and then if you want, you can always do the keep image ratio, which basically, would shrink it down a little bit and keep that camera's image ratio. All right, so that's the scan window feature. Some basic things here in the live view. When a customer wants to be able to full screen a camera, you just simply double click and it will bring up that camera in full screen. And then as you can see, kind of the slight delay there, it's popping it into the full resolution. Because what happens is when you're in the live view matrix here, it's pulling the substream of the cameras here in the matrix view, and that helps to preserve bandwidth. And then, of course, when you double click, it'll bring in that full HD resolution, so you have the full details of the scene on demand when you need it. Now, when you full screen on a camera, and if a customer wants to do digital zoom, you can just simply take the scroll wheel of your mouse and start scrolling up to zoom, and then you can click to drag and look around at your scene. Down here on the bottom, you also have the ability, if you want, to just grab the green box there, and you can move it around to look, and then you can do your zoom in and zoom out. All right, of course, that's digital zoom, so there's nothing moving on the camera. It's not like it's an optical zoom lens or anything like that. But yes, you would have the ability to do digital zoom on any camera that's in your layout. Now, speaking of zoom, if you have a optical zoom lens, like let's say you have one of our TVD 8810 cameras, for example, that has a motorized zoom, you do have the ability right here in Edge Recording Manager to be able to control that zoom and focus. And to do that, you would just go right here to Configure and hit PTZ. And then you'll get your buttons down here in the bottom right where you can control that camera. So again, this would be good for a motorized lens camera, or if you have a true PTZ camera, you'd have the ability to move that camera around. All right, so if I go in here, I can hit my zoom in button, and you can see now we're optically zooming the lens of that camera. And then it'll go ahead and it'll autofocus. And then, of course, you do have manual controls as well. If for whatever reason it was slightly out of focus after you zoomed it, you could, dial that in or out if needed a little bit further. All right, I'll optically zoom this one back out. And then, of course, if you do have a full PTZ camera, you have your controls here where you could turn the camera left, right, You can even go at slight diagonals and those kinds of things. The one thing I do advise is once you're finished up, to go ahead and click on the configure button again and then uncheck PTZ, because that will go ahead and disable that so you don't inadvertently optically zoom that camera in. Because what I just showed there with the PTZ, aside from the buttons down here in the bottom right, you can also use your scroll wheel on your mouse to optically zoom in or out a camera. I'm not going to do it at the moment, but you could scroll up and then it would optically zoom that camera in. And the reason why I advise people to go ahead and turn this back off when you're done is because if a user is clicking around here in the software and they accidentally scroll up on that scroll wheel, it might move the camera out of the field of view that they want it to be in. So a couple other things here in the menu that you get down at the bottom. If we go back into configure, location on host list. So this is kind of a handy feature where if you click on it, it will take you directly to the host list and it will highlight that camera on the list. This is especially convenient if you have, again, a multi-site customer. Let's say they've got 20 locations in here and you want to just quickly find where it's at on the list. That allows you to highlight that and it'll bring you directly to it. That's convenient too when you're going into remote view log and you want to be able to drag that camera in. If we click on properties, if you want to enable the channel ID and host name and camera name to display there, you can do it or you can turn that off. And then I touched on this a minute ago, but keep image ratio. As you see there, if we enable that, we get our slight white bars here at the top and the bottom. So it's a matter of preference if you want it to fill the full screen or not. Now, you do have also your audio buttons right here. So if you have a camera that has a built-in microphone and speaker, or maybe just a built-in microphone, you do have the ability to control that right here. So at your PC, if you have a microphone connected to the PC that's running Edge Recording Manager, and then you have a speaker connected to your camera, you could do a live talk down out to that camera. Now, obviously, this is on a one camera at a time basis. You would need to enable it on this camera and then it would start working. And as you can see up here in the top left, you get an indicator there of your audio. And then wave out. This would allow you to hear any audio from that camera's built-in microphone if it has one. Now, just as a little side note, audio does need to be enabled on the camera side, like within the camera's web interface, as well as in the VMS software before it will work here in the Edge Recording Manager software. So there is a little bit of prior setup that you need to do in there before you can use it here. Snapshot, if a customer is watching something unfold in live view and they want to just quickly take a snapshot so they can reference back to it later, you do have the ability to do that. And as you can see, there's some good information here that you can have printed on top of the video. So for example, the camera name, the date and time, that's especially convenient because again, if they're seeing something happen, in live view and it's unfolding and they want to then reference back to the recorded footage later, they'd have the ability to put that timestamp right on there and then they'll know exactly where to go when they're looking for the full recorded video. So feel free to enable whatever information you'd like to be printed on the camera or on the image there. And you can choose where in the field of view you want that to display. As you can see, I can move it around here. I can also edit the font and the size and color. So depending on your scene, you might want to change this, so it displays a little bit easier. All right, and then of course, whenever you hit OK, it's going to allow you to choose where you want to save that file. So maybe I want to put it on the desktop. Maybe I want to name it, I'll call this one car crash, for example. And then hit save, and then it would save that image directly to the path that you pointed it to. All right, instant play. So this is a feature that would allow you to basically play like the last recorded clip from the camera. And you just would hit instant play and it will bring you directly into that. I don't have this feature on at the moment, so I'm going to skip over that for the moment. But Instant play is right there. And then whenever a user wants to return to the live view, the matrix, you can just double click and it will bring you right back in. Now, let's say you want to be able to rearrange cameras in your layout. It's actually very easy to do. Right here in the top left-hand corner of each camera where it shows the name of the camera, you can just simply click and hold, and you can drag to move that camera's field of view, or move that camera around in your matrix. All right, so pretty easy. You can rearrange on the fly as needed. And wherever you leave the cameras from that point, it will save them with that layout. So if you navigate away from the layout and then come back, they are going to be in that spot later. All right, I want to talk also about the user accounts. So up here in the top right-hand corner, if you go in and click on admin and go to account setup, there's been a couple slight changes in this menu. You'll notice that it looks a little bit different. When you first install Edge Recording Manager, it is going to have you create a username and password. So just make sure that you record that down somewhere. But whenever you get in here for the first time, for installers, I do recommend that you come into this menu and you right click on your administrator account and choose login this ID automatically. It just makes it a lot more convenient for the customer because then they won't have to type in the login ID and password the next time they open it. And also, if I remember correctly, the default right now is it would log it into a guest account if you don't do this. So they would have to log into the administrator account then manually if they want to do things like watch playback footage and save clips and those kinds of things. Now, some side notes, though, obviously with that is there are going to be scenarios where you do not want every user of Edge Recording Manager to have full privileges. So you do have the ability to create different levels of hierarchy and give those people different levels of privileges. And the way that you can do that is you can come in here and hit the plus sign and choose what level of user you want. Let's say, for example, you want to just have a lower level user. You can go ahead and click on that, and you're going to assign it the ID and password right here. And it gave you a little guideline on there on how long the password has to be, what kind of special characters are accepted, and that kind of thing. You can even put a hint here with the password if you'd like. And then once you click OK, that user is created. And then right over here, you have the ability to edit what that user has access to. So for example, if you want to have them, give them the ability to do a system configuration, you can do that. If you want them to have the ability to edit layouts on the list, you can do that. Edit the host list, those kinds of things, exit the software. Maybe you don't want a regular user to be able to exit the software. Maybe you want to make it to where this software remains on the screen at all times. You have the ability to uncheck that for the user. And then if you see there's some various tabs up here that you can go in and play with what levels of access they have. So if you want to give them live view, you can. Maybe you don't want to give them PTZ control to be able to move a camera or optically zoom a camera. You can do that. And then this one right here is pretty important too. Monitor start and stop. So monitor is GeoVision's term for recording. And if you are an administrator account here in Edge Recording Manager, you actually have the ability to start and stop monitoring on the VMS machine. Okay, so you don't obviously want to give that privilege to everyone. And if it's just, a regular level employee, like not a manager, and you want to be able to turn that off, you'd want to create them a user account and don't give them access to monitor start and stop. Okay, because you don't want to lose recorded footage. Remote view log, you do have the ability to give them access to playback footage as well. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to let that user have live view access. So we just click right there, and then we don't check anything from remote view log. But if you do want to give them the ability to remotely view video, you can definitely do that. You can click remote view log, and it will activate that tab for them. Instant playback is the one that I was talking about a moment ago. And then if you want to give them the ability to save a clip, you will want to check the backup/export remote view log data button. And then same thing here, delete. Within Edge Recording Manager, you actually have the ability to delete footage from the VMS server if you want. And again, that's typically something that you'd want to reserve for an administrator account. But for a user account, maybe you don't check that option. Video wall, I'm not going to get into that feature on this training. But that's something that if you want some further information on, just follow up with us after the show. I don't have the ability to show that right now. All right, and then of course you'd hit OK, and it would put those users into effect. And that's how you would create users. Now, the next spot that I would like to show, let's see here if there's, yeah, actually I'd like to show this here. This is a convenient feature, the import data and export data button. Let's say that you're going to be setting up Edge Recording Manager for multiple people. Maybe you've got 10 PCs that you're going to be setting up Edge Recording Manager for. The import data and export data button can be a convenient feature because what it allows you to do is you could set up Edge Recording Manager on the first machine. You can then come in and hit export data, and it will give you a file where you can then go in to the next machine and hit import data, and it will bring all of that data into that next machine. So for example, if you're going to have maybe like 10 managers and they're going to all have the same access to the same site, you could export, the data that'll have all those hosts or all those VMS machines, and then you go to the next system and import that file, and you're set up pretty easily. You don't have to go in and manually add the hosts for every single user's PC. System configure, if we come into here, there's a couple other buttons that you might be interested in. So auto run when Windows starts. Again, if you do want the program to automatically launch every time Windows starts, you can enable that right there. You can choose a light theme or a dark theme. This just is the color scheme basically of the software. And then there's some other things that you can look at here in live view, your snapshot folder path. If you want to alter that, you can do it. And then there's some even more technical things in here. Again, I'm not going to get into all these details. If you ever want to find what version you're on, right here in the top right, just go in there and hit version information. You'll get it right here. And again, we're on the latest from our site right now, 2.3.0.0. One other kind of quick, nice feature is this close all video. So let's say that you want to redo your matrix or your layout. You can just click that button right there and it'll give you, a blank slate to work with again. And then you can start dragging your cameras in. And one other thing that I did not mention is with these layouts, you can mix cameras. So let's say that you want to view maybe 4 cameras from site 1, another 4 cameras from site 2. You can bring in cameras from various hosts all in the same layout. So there's no real restriction on that. All right, next thing I'd like to show is the remote view log. So if we click on remote view log, this is where a user would go in and watch recorded footage. And what you'll want to do is right over here on the left, you've got, again, your host list. This is the same. And you can basically drag in a camera that you're interested in viewing. And as you can see, it's going to give you a 24-hour timeline along the bottom here. And if you're set up for motion recording on the VMS side, it's going to give you these red tick marks that indicate where your motion events are at. If you are doing continuous recording, you're going to see a constant blue bar here. Now, with the timeline, you do have the ability to zoom in on an hour and enlarge it to look at a minute view of that hour. And to do that, you just simply position your cursor between the 2 hours you're interested in and scroll up with the scroll wheel on your mouse. And as you can see, now I'm looking at a minute view of that hour. Now, by popular demand, they recently added in this new feature right here, which we already had this on the VMS software, but it's the preview feature here in Edge Recording Manager. And what this allows you to do is basically scrub over your timeline and you can see a real-time update of what was happening on that camera at that particular moment in time. All right, and then once you click on that moment in time, it's going to sync up your camera right here in the layout. And then you can just simply hit play and it will play back that footage for you. Now, if you drag in multiple cameras, what you're going to see is two bars on your timeline here. And you'll see a label over on the left. The top bar right here is going to indicate motion events for the camera that you've clicked on. So as you notice, when I click on the various cameras, that top bar will change. The bottom bar is basically saying any camera, there's at least one camera in the layout that has motion at this particular moment in time. So even though, let's say I click on this camera and I've got a large gap where there's nothing going on here, there is at least one other camera within my layout that has motion at this moment in time. And then the other thing I want to illustrate is, let's say that we want to view multiple channels synced up together and playing back video together. What will happen if that is occurring, if you have motion going on two cameras simultaneously, they will play back simultaneously. And then if additional cameras within your layout start to pick up at that point in time with motion, they will pop into the layout as well. All right, and then they will, of course, drop out when motion goes away, and you'll see a blank screen there. All right, now some other things that you can do here on the timeline is you do have the ability to speed up or slow down your playback. So right down here on the bottom, we can click and we can go up to 8x normal speed. So, if you want to just more quickly watch your footage, you can do that. You can see there we're now playing back at a faster rate. Or we can dial that down and you can go all the way down to a quarter speed. All right, so now we're playing back basically in slow motion. Now, your functions of the playback video are almost identical to the live view with regards to being able to full screen a camera. You just simply double click on that. And then, of course, zooming, you would just do your digital zoom here just by scrolling up with the scroll wheel on your mouse or down to zoom out, and then to click and drag to look around at your scene. And then double click to return to your layout. Now, layouts. Speaking of this, top left-hand corner where we go to layouts, any layout that you created in the live view will now be available for you in the playback window. So really, you only have to create that layout once. So here's the one that I made earlier called Exterior 1. If I double click on it, now it will bring in the layout exactly how I had it in the live view. Okay, so it makes it a really seamless transition for the end user because they don't have to rebuild the layouts. They also will be familiar with exactly where those cameras were laid out in the matrix view. All right, now depending on your PC spec, I would kind of be cognizant of how many cameras you're trying to play back simultaneously. It might not be a good idea on like an i3 processor to try to play back 32 or 64 cameras simultaneously. So, just feel that out, just depending on what your PC specs are. You're going to get different levels of performance. I like to tell people to try to keep it to about 4 to 8 cameras at a time, but of course the software can do more than that. But just a side note there on playing back numerous channels simultaneously. So next I'd like to talk about saving a clip. If a user would like to save a clip directly onto their PC, you can do it right here in the remote view log. And there's a couple of different ways that we can go about this. Let's say, for example, this is the clip that we're interested in. We saw something happening within the camera's field of view, and we need to preserve that video so it never gets overwritten. You can highlight here on the timeline and mark never recycle. This will make it to where it will save that video on the VMS side where it'll never overwrite over it. Okay, so if you have a case in court and you need to make sure that that video never gets recycled and erased, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and mark never recycle. You can either do it on the focused camera, which would be the camera that you're clicked on. It's this one here in the top left called dumpsters. Or you can choose all cameras on layout. So, by choosing that, every camera here in our layout is going to be preserved. Once your court case is over and you don't really care about the footage anymore, you can come back here and hit unmark never recycle. And again, we have the same two options there. So that's one thing, just as a little side note as far as on preserving video. But for actually saving a clip onto your customer's Edge Recording Manager PC, you have a couple options here. Backup and save as AVI. Personally, I prefer the backup option, but there is save as AVI as well. There are pros and cons to each. And for backup, I like this because it will save a copy of the GeoVision player directly with the file that you export. That means no matter who you give that file folder to, they will be able to easily open it on their PC. They don't have to download anything special. They basically got everything that they need there. Now, when you open this up, by default, every camera that's on your layout is selected. If you want, you can hit the little white box here and clear the cameras. And let's say maybe we're just interested in preserving that dumpster camera. We can do that. You could even trim down your date and time frame here if you need to. And then whenever you hit OK, you're brought to your window right here where you have the ability to choose where you want that folder to be saved. So you just simply click using hard disk. And then right here, you can go up and navigate within Windows and choose where you want it to point. Let's say I want to go to my desktop with it. And then you can even name the folder if you would like. Now, another new feature that's been added into this version of the VMS is to back up on a schedule. All right, so let's say that you want the backup to occur maybe overnight when users are not in the facility and it's not going to be affecting your bandwidth performance. You do have the ability now to schedule a backup. And right here, you just would go in and you would choose, again, your path right at the top. And then you have the ability to choose your backup time right in here. All right, so you can choose, what day of the week that you want it to happen, what time. You'd hit add right there and it would add your backup schedule, and then you'd hit OK. And then you come back in here to hit OK and start that backup schedule. All right, now by default, this is what I was talking about with the player. It includes a copy of the GeoVision player by default now. This is enabled already. And so whenever I would hit OK, it's going to go ahead and back up that clip with the player directly onto my desktop. All right, now, another big reason why I like the backup feature a little bit more is because it's a quicker process. As you can see there, we're finished up. That backup is completed now and it's saved to my desktop. If any of you have ever used the Save as AVI, it does take a little bit longer because it has to convert the video from one file format to another. And that, takes time to process that. All right, so if I hit OK, it is saved now. I can go ahead and minimize all my windows here. Here's my folder. And right here, whenever I expand, some people do become a little bit intimidated by this because there is a lot of files in here. But I always tell people it's actually pretty easy. And what you're looking for is something called Easy View Log. If we double click on Easy View Log, it will go ahead and launch that player that I had mentioned is included with the backup. And so now we can full screen and we have a full player here where we can drag the camera in. And this gives us the ability to have full controls over the video. When you do a Save as AVI, you're typically going to be saving that in an AVI where it'll play back in like a Windows Media Player or a VLC player. And you don't really have much control over the video. Right here, when you use the Easy View Log, I can still full screen a camera. I can still digitally zoom and look around at my camera's field of view. So I have a lot more control on the video. And then on my timeline, I even have the ability right here to say click. And again, let's say I want to slow down that playback to half speed and hit play. And I have, full controls over it right there. All right, and then of course, the other thing, if I did back up multiple channels, I could drag in multiple cameras and play those synced up together right here within the Easy View Log. I can even go in and add layouts if I want to customize how large or small one of them displays. So you really get full controls like you have in the Edge Recording Manager right here in the Easy View Log. All right, now if I go back into Edge Recording Manager, my other option here, if I highlight the timeline, would be the Save as AVI option. So if I go ahead and click on this, One thing you'll want to be aware of when you do save as AVI is if you have a multi-channel grid created, as you can see here, it basically lays out your cameras exactly like you have them in that multi-channel grid. All right, so the reason why I point that out is because if you do want to make it to where a camera exports and is full screened, what I would actually advise is to create a single channel layout, drag that camera in, and then do your save as AVI. So I'll actually demonstrate that really quick. If I go back into live view, I'm going to make a new layout and call it single channel. Let's make this a 1x1. Now we have a 1-channel grid. And when I go into live view, we will drag in maybe this warehouse 3 camera. All right, and now if I go to the timeline and highlight and hit save as AVI, we'll be able to see that we have one division, and let me move along here on the timeline. And as you can see, it fills up the full screen. All right, so with the other one, if you had a multi-channel layout created, and there are some cameras that don't have motion at particular moments in time, they will remain blank. It'll be black in that camera's area until the motion for that camera occurs, and then it will pop in alongside any other cameras that are displaying. Now, when you're here in the Save as AVI window, you do, of course, have the ability to trim down your times up at the top. So if you want to maybe cut it down to like a 1-minute clip or whatever, you can do that. You can also click on Setting and choose where you want that video to be saved. So again, we just click the little ellipses button there, go up to Desktop, and I'm going to call this Test Clip. Hit Save. And on here, I do advise making sure that you're set to WMV9 as your codec. This will play back in standard media players, you know, like Windows Media Player or that kind of thing. So make sure that you are checked on that. And then right here, you would just hit the Start button. And it's going to ask, you know, confirm the time interval that you would like to save. This is popping up because I narrowed my time frame down. It just wants to make sure that you only want a short period of that time. So we'll hit OK, and then you'll see here it'll start loading and merging the file. All right, and this is where I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It is a little bit slower process because, again, it's converting it from one file format to another. But it'll go through its merge, and then it'll back up that clip and place it on the desktop. And of course, you'll get a notification here once that is complete. And you'll be able to click right in here, and then it'll bring in and it'll directly play back that footage for you. Okay, this is just a preview that's generated from Edge Recording Manager, but you'll have the ability to play it back when this is done in either a Windows Media Player or VLC or those kinds of players. All right, I'm going to just cancel this job for now. And then I'll hit play. And then as you can see here, this is what I was referring to, where it's playing back just in a Windows Media Player. All right, so those are your two options for saving a clip through the Edge Recording Manager program. One other little thing that I'd like to show here on the timeline is the object search feature. So this can be kind of handy to help you more quickly locate an event. Let's say, for example, you know something happened in a camera's field of view, but you don't know exactly when it happened. You'd have the ability to do some searching based on certain types of events. I like the alarm one because we can hit the wrench icon here, and then you have the ability to draw a box over a region of interest, and you can designate that as an alarm region. Once you hit OK, you can then go in and hit search, and it will scan through and it'll find any times where someone went into that camera's field of view. You'll start to see some events populate here. You're seeing right there, and now we can go ahead and just click, and then it'll play back. And usually it does a couple seconds of pre-record, but once you hit play, there's our person that's walking into that zone that we defined. All right, so again, it's just kind of a way to help the customer find their video quicker rather than just manually scrubbing through the timeline and looking at a full 24 hours. All right, bookmarks is one other feature I'd like to show in here that's in Edge Recording Manager now. This allows you to basically make a, for lack of a better word, a bookmark, where if you want to have a list of events that you reference back to later, you can do that. So let's say that you saw something happening in the camera's field of view. You want to bookmark that time. You can go ahead and put a note with it. I'll just call this test 1, hit OK, and now it has added that event as a bookmark. And then you do have the ability, of course, to retrieve those bookmarks. If we go in here, it'll have a list of them, and then you'd be able to double click and it'll sync you up directly to that time that you bookmarked. All right, so again, just kind of a quick and handy way to reference back to any footage that you need to look back at. Of course, a couple other things in here in playback, very similar to live view. You've got your snapshot icon. Again, if you want to save just a quick snapshot, you can do it. Or down in here, you do have some video effects that you can enable. Maybe you need to brighten the scene a little bit, or adjust, contrast or those kinds of things. You can do it. And then your keep image ratio is available there as well. Now, I can't demonstrate it here in this because I don't have it set up, but if you have POS integration set up on your VMS server, you actually have the ability right here from Edge Recording Manager to access your POS integration. It'll pull open the web POS search. So just a little side note, you do have the ability to access that here on the Edge Recording Manager side. All right, so those are really some of the basic everyday features of the Edge Recording Manager software. I am now going to kind of shift gears, and we're going to talk about pointing a VMS system to the GV Cloud site. So just as a recap for everyone, and I'm going to bring this in for illustrated purposes, with the latest versions of the VMS software, VMS 17, 18, and of course the upcoming VMS 20 that we've trained on this week, you have the ability to point your VMS system to the GV Cloud for remote viewing with no port forwarding required. And then the other thing that's convenient about it is you don't have to install any programs on the customer's PC for them to be able to remotely view. Okay, when you're doing this, it would then be web-based. So as long as they have an internet connection, all they would have to do would be to pull open a web browser, and it would give them the ability to remotely view, again, with no program and no port forwarding. All right, so pointing your VMS to the cloud, there is a free option, and then there is a paid option. If you're okay with just continuing to record your video onto the VMS server itself and then viewing in the cloud live footage as well as what's recorded on the VMS server, there is no monthly fee at all associated with that. You do, however, have the ability to purchase a GV Cloud storage license, and that can be done on a per channel basis. So let's say, for example, you have a 64-channel VMS server. You've got 64 cameras on it, and maybe 10 of those cameras are critical cameras that you need to have some redundant footage stored in the cloud. You would have the ability to just purchase a license for those 10 cameras only, while the other cameras on the system just continue to only record to the VMS server. Okay, so when you do purchase those licenses, again, it doesn't have to be for every camera. It can be for select critical cameras. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how you can get a VMS system connected to the cloud, and then I'm going to give a basic tour of the cloud and show some of the features of it and what you get. And towards the end, I'll even jump on my my mobile device, and I'll show that once we have added the VMS to our GV Cloud account, we can then see that in the GV Cloud mobile app. So I am logged in right now to my GV Cloud account. You, of course, would have to create an account first. But once you do that, you can come in here to Cloud VMS. And when it brings you to the home screen, you'll want to look over to the left at the host list. And this is where you will add your hosts of your various VMS machines. Again, this can be very convenient for a multi-site customer because let's say that they have 10 locations with a VMS server at each site. You would have the ability to add all of those sites into the same cloud account for central viewing. Now, what you are limited in with the cloud web page on your live view tab is you can view up to 16 cameras at a time right now. And that's obviously for bandwidth purposes. You do have the ability to cycle through and access different cameras anytime you need, but 16 cameras simultaneously is the max number of cameras that you can have up. Now, prior to adding a host, especially for a multi-site client, it would be a good idea to create what's called a region. So as you can see here, we have a few different regions created. We have one called California, Texas, one that's called BD. And you can create as many regions as you want, and then you can add your VMS server to that region. All right, so you can think of a region as basically like a site name or a location. And the way you can create regions is right here in the top left. Click on the GeoVision icon and go to Account Management. Once you're on here, over on the left, you can click Regions. You can see a list of the regions that have already been created. You can click Add Region and then just simply give it a name. I'm going to call this Orange County. We'll hit Send right there. And then we can navigate back to our GV Cloud VMS tab. And now we have the ability to go ahead and create our host code so we can add the VMS into that region. To do this, on the host page, you click on Add Host in the top right. And then here's our region field. We just want to make sure we click the drop down and select the correct region. And you can name the site. Again, I'll call it Test Site 1. You'll want to go ahead and give it a password. And then your contact information here, this is completely optional. But once you hit apply, you'll get a host code right here. All right, you can copy that host code, and then you will need to go into your VMS machine. And we're going to now point the VMS to our GV Cloud account. The way that you do that is you'll go into the Network tab, and we're going to hit Connect to GV Cloud. Now, I may need to go and disable our webcam services and those kinds of things in a minute. We'll kind of see, but basically what you do when this window pops up is you, in the host code field, you go ahead and paste that host code that was generated, and then you're going to just type in that password that you created for that host. You can then hit Connect, and once you do that, we go back to our host list, and we hit Refresh. Right here under Orange County, we can see Test Site 1 now has a green bubble. That indicates that that site is now connected. All right, now a couple things before I go on that I want to talk about here on the Connect to GV Cloud tab. I'm going to disable it for a moment and then re-enable it. Is if you purchase the GV Cloud storage license, you have a configure button right here where you can go in and you can choose things that you want, like events that you want to point to the cloud. So if we go down here and click, let's say, for example, you want certain analytics to point to the cloud or those kinds of things, certain motion events to be registered as a cloud event. You will have the ability to enable those in here. All right, so we'll connect that again. Now, for the network services, earlier I talked about the startup feature right here and how you have the ability to make these services auto run. If you are going to use the GV Cloud solution, I of course do recommend using the Connect to GV Cloud as a startup service. So again, you'd want to come back in here, enable that, and then hit OK. So that way, if the machine ever does reboot, your connection to GV Cloud will be reestablished. I'm not going to do it on this customer's machine, but I wanted you to at least see that's where you would do that. All right, now, if we come back into the GV Cloud VMS page, as you can see again, our host is connected there. If you ever do need to delete a host, let's say that you want to get a host completely out of here, you can do that just by simply clicking on it and then hitting the trash can button. It will ask you to then delete the host, and then it will delete it out of your cloud account. All right, and then right in here, this is kind of useful too. Once you get your host added into the GV Cloud, this is convenient because, especially for installers, it allows you to see what version of the VMS that site is running. So good for management and maintenance, knowing what systems might need to be updated. So you can click on here and see that. You can also go in and you can see, how many cameras that you've got on that system, what resolution they're set at, what types of monitoring they're set at. And then under storage, I don't know here. Let's take a look. Yeah, actually, it'll tell you a little bit about the storage on your system as well. So you can get a little bit of information right here through the cloud. Now, I'd like to just give kind of a quick tour of the cloud website since we've added our VMS in. As you can see, we've got multiple hosts here, multiple regions. The home screen here, this is to be used if you purchase a cloud storage account. Because what will happen is it has the ability to display either AI events or motion events. And this window is basically only usable when you purchase a cloud storage account. But what it would allow a customer to do would be able to look through the events, and then if they see one they're interested in, they can click on it and it will bring up and it'll allow them to directly play back that event. Okay, again, this is only available though if you do purchase the cloud storage plan. And the other thing that happens on this window is the ability to download a clip, the ability right here with the link button to share a link to where another user can view that clip. And then also a feature that we call archive, where you can save that clip into your cloud account so it's again preserved and it never gets overwritten if, say, you only have a 30-day storage plan and day 31 comes around and that camera would normally be recycled. That camera view would normally be recycled. So you do have the ability to preserve it. All right, so over on the left, if we expand our sidebar, live stream. So right in here is where a customer has the ability to go in and view live video. So you could click the drop down and you'd have the ability to see all your cameras at your site. You can click and then it would bring in that live camera view. One little side note I do want to advise everyone is when you first set up GV Cloud VMS and you come here to the live view tab, right up in this section, you're going to see a little icon that looks like that play window with the arrow pointing down. I highly recommend installing that. It is a web plugin that gives you a more user-rich feature experience here in the Cloud Live View Stream tab. So I'd recommend downloading that and running that installer. And then again, it'll give you kind of more controls and more things that you can do here within the cloud. Now, I mentioned earlier, you can display up to 16 cameras at a time in the cloud. You now even have the ability to create layouts and group cameras into your layouts. Just like you can do on the Edge Recording Manager, you can do it here in the cloud. So even though this is a browser-based solution, you actually still have quite a bit of usable features. And the way you do that is right here, Add View. If we click on it, we have the ability to name a view. I'll call this one again, Test 1. And then right here, you can choose how many divisions that you want. Let's say we want a 3x3. And then here on the left, we have a list of all of our sites. And then you would just simply click the cameras that you want to appear in that layout. Now, you can mix if you have, where you want maybe 6 cameras from site 1 and then maybe a couple cameras from site 2. You do have the ability to mix cameras like that. And of course, you can create as many layouts as you want. Okay, there's no real limit on the number of layouts. And then, by the way, these layouts are customizable per user login. So I'll get into different accounts here in a few minutes, but you actually would have the ability on a per user basis to create your own unique layouts. And then whenever you log in, you have access to those layouts. So once you've created your layout, right here in the top left where it says all cameras and you have a drop down, you can click on that and there's the one that we created. If I click on it, now it will bring in those cameras that I added into that layout. All right, and then again, we have the ability to click the X to go back to a single channel view, or let's say that we want to flip over to a 2x2 grid, we have the ability to do that as well. Now, once you have clicked on a layout that you're interested in, and let's say, for example, you want to make a change to it, you have the ability to click Edit View right here, and then you can actually rearrange your layouts. So if you want to delete a camera out, you can do that just by simply clicking the X's there. So now we have a blank canvas again. And let's say, for example, I'm just going to add in a few back from that one site. We'll do that right there and hit save. And now we'll start to see our cameras pull in and our layout is now edited. All right, now a couple other things here. You'll see along the top some buttons, WS player and JS player. So you can toggle between these as you like, but from my understanding, the JS player tries to pull the substream of the cameras, I believe it is, so they might load a little bit quicker. And then whenever you want to pull the HD resolution of a camera, you can just simply click it on demand and it will pop that camera into live or into HD resolution. Okay, so if you have a slower network and you want these cameras to load a little bit faster, you might consider using the JS player. My network's pretty good here, so we'll just go ahead and continue using the WS player. Full screen. Let's say that you want these cameras to remain on a screen and you don't necessarily need these menus up. You can actually hit the full screen button and it'll put it into full res, full screen, full res type of view. As you can see here, whenever I hover my mouse into a camera's field of view, I do get a menu that comes up for each camera that I hover into. And so again, let's say I want to pop that camera into full resolution. You can see it had a slight change there. And then I can even click right here to enable digital zoom. And I have the ability to zoom even while while it's in full screen. All right, I can click off of the digital zoom, click off of the HD, and then when you want to return to the previous view where you have the menu, you can either hit this collapse button right here or just hit escape on your keyboard and it will bring you right back in here into the live view. All right, now some other things that you can do, let's say that you want to just single view full screen one camera. You can just simply click that button right there and then it will full screen and full res that camera for you. And then again, we have in the bottom left-hand corner our digital zoom button that we can enable and start to do our zooming. Once you're finished, just hit your collapse button and you're back in your matrix view. A couple other things. Right here at the bottom, you have a snapshot button. So again, if you see something happening and you want to just quickly save that photo, you can do it. You can even include your date and timestamp directly on top of the footage. And you can, set your color and everything right there. Audio within the cloud is possible. And if you have audio enabled on the VMS side, or if you're using the GeoVision direct-to-cloud cameras that have a built-in microphone, you can actually hear that audio here in the cloud. And you would just simply click on the speaker button right there, and that would give you the ability to hear that audio here on your PC. Now, a couple other things that you can do, if you right-click on a camera, you've got a menu that comes up with some different options. So snapshot, microphone, fisheye, and then information. If you click on this, this will tell you what bit rate you're pulling, what frame rate, what resolution, all those kinds of things. I don't have a fisheye here on my host list, I don't think. So I don't think I'm going to be able to demonstrate this, but if you did have one of our direct-to-cloud fisheye cameras and you wanted to dewarp it in the cloud, you'd have the ability to click fisheye. Looks like it is going to do it on this camera, actually. And then you can even right-click again and go to fisheye option. And let's say you have a wall-mounted fisheye. You could go ahead and select that. And then you can even go in and choose what camera mode you want the fisheye to appear in. So right now, with me being in the quad view, I've got 4 separate quadrants that I can do pan, tilt, and zoom control on. Just obviously pretend this was a fisheye camera. But I can move these around here and get them set how I'd like. Or let's say I want to use a 180 field of view. I could do that. Or there's a couple others here as well. You've got the panoramic 180 at the bottom, and then with the 2 quadrants that you can move around also. Okay, so you can flip through those. And then as you see, pretty much all of the fisheye options that you'd have are in here. If you need to change your image alignment, or there was one previously where you could do your object tracking, that's even available in here as well. Right here, adjust auto pan speed. That'll move that. So quite a bit of options that you have. Here's your 360 object tracking if you had a fisheye camera. So a lot that you can enable here, even though you're in the cloud. All right, so that's live view. For playback, if we go over here on the left and hit playback, again, we'll have all of our regions listed here. We'll click the drop down for a region of interest, click on the camera that we're interested in. And as you can see, this window here looks pretty much identical to the Edge Recording Manager software. I think they did a pretty nice job of designing this and getting the Edge Recording Manager interface to be here in the GV Cloud. So it's kind of a seamless experience for existing customers. You're going to be pretty familiar with this based on the training that we just went through. So you've got your full controls where you can zoom in and out on an hour and enlarge an hour to look at a minute view. And then obviously your tick marks indicate where you have motion. You can click on a particular moment in time and it will sync up. And then you go ahead and hit play and you're watching that recorded footage right there. Now, an important thing to note right here, this little orange folder icon, if you have purchased a cloud storage plan, you have the ability to toggle between watching footage that was stored on your local device or what you've stored in your cloud plan. Okay, so if you purchased a cloud storage plan, you could click that and it would flip and it would be a blue cloud icon at that point. And then it's showing that you're pulling video that you've stored in the cloud. So where that might be handy is, let's say, for example, you did buy a cloud plan and you were recording to the VMS server and the cloud simultaneously, but maybe a hard drive went bad on the VMS server. All right, so you lost the video locally on the VMS, but at least you had it backed up in the cloud for redundancy purposes, and you still have it to where you can access it here in the cloud. Now, saving a clip is identical to doing it on what I showed on Edge Recording Manager, but they've actually simplified one thing. And what that is whenever you do the backup here in the cloud, instead of saving a folder with a lot of different files in it, it does save as one file that can be played in a media player. So right here, whenever I open this up, now again, you can trim down your time frame if needed. I'll just keep this as, I'm gonna keep that as about a 1 minute clip. Hit OK. And then again, we choose where we want that file to be saved. And then if you want, you can change your folder name. We'll keep that right there. Hit OK. And then it'll tell you that it's added to the backup schedule. And you'll just give it a minute here and you'll see a notification that'll pop up in the bottom right-hand corner when it's completed. And then you'll actually be able to go in and retrieve that footage and watch that file. And again, when you open the folder, it will be a single file in there. You won't have to open up the Easy View Log or anything like that. So we'll let that go for a few minutes here. While that's happening, I'll show a couple other things. Audio. So when you are watching playback, of course, you do have the ability to hear audio if you are recording it as well. So you just enable your audio right there. And then, of course, you have your speed up and slow down buttons here as well. All right. You even over on the right have the ability to go in and, there's some other menu options, your keep image ratio and those kinds of things. So. All right, so we'll come back to that playback clip once it's finished up. The next thing I would like to show, let's talk about AI search. And this is a feature that is mainly for direct-to-cloud cameras. So not really at the moment for a VMS server that's pointed to the cloud, but I do want people to see this because it's a very handy feature if you're using GeoVision's direct-to-cloud cameras and you've purchased a cloud storage license. What you have the ability to do is you can come in here and you can search not only based on analytics that are built into those direct-to-cloud cameras, like loitering or intrusion or those kinds of things, but there's also an option in the camera called video metadata. If you enable the video metadata option, you have the ability to go in here and you can search by people and vehicle attributes. So let's say, for example, we know a particular time. Let's say we're going to look through maybe Monday through Friday of this week. We can click that. We can trim down our time if we need to. And we know that we're looking for an adult that was wearing black upper body clothing color. Okay, we could search across all cameras in our cloud account, or let's say it's just one particular site we're interested in. We could go in and just select that site only, or you could go in and just search on an individual camera basis. Okay, so there's a lot of different searches that you can perform there. And then once you have your criteria, you just hit query, and then over on the right, it will pull your results. All right, once you have found your event, you'd be able to click on it and it will bring in a window where you can directly play back that clip. All right, so my backup that I'm doing is still kind of going on in the background here. So give me just a moment. Let me refresh this. Probably going to wait until the backup is finished, but you'd have the ability to do a smart search based on the people and vehicle attributes and then play back that footage. And again, it just kind of helps that customer find their video quicker rather than doing a manual search of a timeline. Under vehicles, this is especially impressive because you can not only search by types of vehicles like a sedan or a pickup or that kind of thing. There's even a brand search here where let's say that you're looking for a particular brand of vehicle. You can select that, hit query, and then again, it will pull any of those results right there. And let's say you want to pair that and maybe even do a combination search, show me all the white Tesla vehicles, for example. We want to narrow it down to just those types of vehicles. You can do a combination search. Now, I will admit, this is not going to be 100%. It's going to be in the high 90s as far as accuracy. Like you're going to see a mismatch once in a while. But as our engineers further train this engine, it is going to become closer and closer to 100%. So you can see there is one mismatch there. Now, license plate searching, this is something that will be added later with a new direct-to-cloud license plate camera called the GV-LPR2812-DL. And with that model, if you point it to the cloud and purchase a cloud storage license, you will have the ability to search based on license plate numbers right here in the cloud webpage. So this feature is already here. It's not enabled quite yet, but on an upcoming release of GV Cloud, that will be active. And, with that being said, that's another really nice point I always like to make people aware of with a cloud-based viewing platform like this is, especially for an installer from an integrator's perspective, you do not have to manually push updates to the cloud. Okay, that's something where as we further develop and enhance the cloud, we push these updates, and one day your customer will log in and there will be additional features that are already available for them. Okay, so more and more development will be made on this cloud, and more things will be added in. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about with the cloud right here, if you purchase a storage plan, is the archives feature. So I showed it earlier when I was on the home screen, where if you click on an event that you were interested in and you want to preserve that footage so it doesn't get overwritten after, say, your 30-day retention plan, there was a little archive button that you could hit. And when you do that, it asks you to create a note with the archive. It will then save it right here into your archives folder. All right, so once we go into archives, here's events that we have previously archived. And you'd have the ability to click and play back that event, even if it was further back than your retention plan. So let's say, for example, I only had a 30-day retention plan. Well, here's a clip back from July of 2024 that's still preserved in our GV Cloud account. All right, and then of course, once you were to click on one of these, you actually have the ability to share that clip with someone as well. There's a share links button. I don't have one here, but let's see if we can go back. Yeah, right here. If we click on the share link button, you have the ability to choose like how many hours you want this link to be valid. So let's give them 48 hours to view the clip. Let's give it a note. We'll call it car. And then if you want, you can password protect it. Once you hit generate, all you have to do is then type in the email address of who you want to receive this clip. And when it emails them, All they have to do is just click on the link, and it takes them directly to this window right here, where it will start playing back that clip. So it's a very simplified way for someone to be able to share and view a clip. You don't have to worry about downloading a program or having the correct codec or the correct player to be able to play back that footage. All right, and then just a little side note here. When you're looking at these events in the cloud, of course, right here, this tab is your local playback. You have your cloud playback that you can click on. Again, that's where if you purchased a cloud plan, you'd be able to see that playback as well. Conveniently, you could click and flip to live video, and see what's going on at that camera at that particular moment in time. And then snapshot, this is going to show you just what triggered this event. All right, alerts. This, again, kind of comes more into play with the direct-to-cloud cameras that have analytics built in and those kinds of things. But if you wanted to set up alerts to the customer, push notifications, you would have the ability to do that right here under the Alert tab. And again, this is if you purchase a cloud storage plan. This is active. You could come in here and choose a schedule. You, of course, would name your alert, whatever you want to name it. Choose your start and stop time for the alert and what days of the week you want it to be valid. And right here under triggered alerts, you've got some different categories that you can set up which would trigger those alerts. So for example, under AI event, with the cameras that I talked about earlier, the direct-to-cloud cameras that have built-in analytics, maybe for example, loitering, we'll use this as a good example. If any loitering occurs outside of a customer's business, like out in the parking lot after business hours, maybe you would want to get a real-time push notification that occurred after business hours. So you can come in here and select loitering, set your schedule with it, and hit save. And then it would have the ability to send those push notifications to that GB Cloud mobile app and alert that person that event has occurred. All right, and then lastly here, I'd like to talk about operator privileges. And this is basically where you can set up different levels of accounts and grant access. So within operator list, you can click here to add an operator, and it brings you to the account management tab right here. So this is where you can create a user and give them access to your GB Cloud account. Let's say, for example, you are an end user and you're the manager of the facility. You're going to be the main account holder, but you want to have some sub accounts under you so people can view some cameras. That's what we're going to look at now. And right here under account management, you just simply click on create user, and you can add their name and email. And if you'd want, you can add their mobile number for two-factor authentication. But once you fill out this information, it's going to send that person an email where they will need to open it up on a PC and click a link to verify their account. Once they verify their account, they're going to get a second email that will have their account number and then a temporary password that they can use to log in. And just as a side note, I will advise everyone, once you do log in with that temporary password for the first time, you can come in and change your password. And to do that, you're going to come down here to the little icon, the little man icon, and you're going to hit account settings. And then right here, the shield, security, this is where you can make your password change. So currently, it does not force a user to change their password upon first login. That is something that our headquarters is currently evaluating if they can implement that. But right now, you do have the ability to come in and change your temporary password if you need to. And of course, this is where you can turn on two-factor authentication as well. All right, but once you have those various accounts created, you can come back in here to operator privileges, and you'd have the ability to click on an account. And as you can see over on the right side, you'll have all of your regions that you've added in to your GB Cloud account. And now you can start to give that user that you've clicked on access to certain sites or certain cameras. And as you'll notice here, there's a few different columns of things that you can give them access to: live view, playback, and PTZ. And just as a side note with PTZ is that will be for motorized lens cameras, as well as true pan, tilt, and zoom cameras that you can move left, right, up, down, and those kinds of things. So let's say, for example, this account right here that I clicked on Jeanette, maybe we want to give Jeanette some access to the Orange County location. And you have a couple ways that you can do this. Auto, let's say that you want to give that person live view, all cameras. If you toggle the auto, this is very convenient because what it does is it'll go ahead and check every camera that's on the list. But for you as a security installer, it actually kind of future-proofs you a little bit, because let's say that you added 32 cameras to that VMS machine yesterday, and then today you go in and add maybe 10 more cameras to the site. As long as you have auto checked, you don't have to come back in here and grant that person access to the additional cameras that you added in the day after. Okay, so when you toggle auto, it'll basically do any current cameras and then any new cameras that have been added to the system. Alternatively, let's say that you want to just give that user access to a few cameras. You can actually go in and just on an individual camera basis, you can select what they have access to. You also can say, okay, yes, you get live and playback for just those cameras, or maybe you don't get playback at all. And then yes, you do get the ability to pan, tilt, and zoom on your cameras. Okay, now pan, tilt, and zoom does not include just regular zoom. It's only concerning optical zoom. It's not digital zoom. So you can, even if you leave this off, a user can still digitally zoom on an image where there's no moving parts. But PTZ has to do with the actual moving components of the camera. All right, and then of course you do have the ability to give them multi-site access if you want. So let's say we're going to give Jeanette some access to the California site, and then maybe all the Orange County location as well. So come in here and we can designate what that person gets access to on a per region basis. All right, once you hit save, that would go into effect. And then when that user logs in and they come into the live view screen, all they're going to see is the regions that you've given them access to, or the cameras that you've given them access to. Okay, so that's how you would set up different levels of users and then grant them different levels of access to the system. Now, if you ever need to be able to delete a user out of the system, it's pretty easy to do. You can just come right up here to the GeoVision icon and go to Account Management, and you can click on the user. And then in the top right-hand corner, you have the trash can icon, and that will delete them out of the system. One other little side note here while we're on this page that you might be interested in is the master account feature. Let's say that the GV Cloud account was made in Manager 1's email address. Okay, Manager 1 it was created in, but maybe there's another manager at the facility and you want to give that person full privileges of the system, of the GV Cloud website. You want to give them the ability to see everything, create users, control everything. You can actually make someone else a master account just by simply ticking this box right here. And by doing that, it gives them full privileges of the site. Okay, so if you ever do have a scenario where you need to do it, just make sure you click master and then hit the send button, and it will make that person a master account. All right, everybody. Well, I do want to thank everyone for attending the training this week. We have been recording these events, so if you do want to watch it back at a later time, or you want anyone else from your team to be able to view these, please contact us. We can provide you links to where these can be viewed, and they will be posted very shortly. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your support of GeoVision, and please reach out if we can help you out on any project opportunities. Thank you.